All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Amaresh. I'm one of the co-founders of Multiplier. Really excited to bring these exciting guests for you all today. Multiplier, just to we'll do a bit of housekeeping, and I'll just take a second to tell everyone what Multiplier is if you're not familiar with us. Multiplier is an identity governance tool purpose-built for JSM. We have customers like Indeed and National Geographic using our tool to automate everything from employee onboarding, offboarding, application access requests, and user access reviews in JSM. And today I'm actually connecting from Barcelona. I'm here for Team 25 next week, and really excited to have three of the Atlassian World's top experts to chat about cybersecurity in Atlassian Cloud. So before I introduce the panel, just want to let you know how things are going to work today. So the session is the panel discussion. I've got a list of questions. Each of the panelists will get a chance to answer the question, but given the depth of expertise that we've got in the room, I think we can go off piste and sort of, just uh, have a bit of like banter and debate and maybe, like have some spicy opinions that I think will be, really interesting. So with that in mind, definitely viewers, please feel free to ask questions at any time. Drop in your comments and thoughts, any experiences and insights, war stories. You're I'm looking forward to seeing what you have to say. We will keep some space towards the end of the hour to answer those questions, but we'll also use some of the insights that surfaced today to write up a guide that we'll send to everybody who's signed up for this event. We are recording this, and we will send this over to you at some point towards the end of the week. Um, I think we're going to pop the link in the notes for you to sign up if you haven't yet. So, with that said, let's go ahead and meet our guests. I'm going to go around the room and ask each of you to briefly introduce yourself. Let's start with Rodney.
All right. Well, my name is Rodney Nissen. I am probably better known as the Jira Guy. I've been the blogger at JiraGuy.com. I am a co-host on the Jira Life podcast, and as of last week, a newly minted Rocketeer. So I've been around the community though for about 11 years now. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, super excited to learn a little bit more from you today. Matt, do you want to go next?
Sure, I can go next. I'm Matt. Hi, I'm Matt Doar, and I'm with Adaptivist, as you can see from the name at the moment. Been there a couple of years. I've been working with Atlassian tools for around 20 years, partly running my own company, partly I've worked for Service Rocket for 6 years. And what else do I want to say? Yes, large DC instances, and now I spend my time holding customers' hands and making them happy about the move to cloud.
Matt, you're being extremely modest. You are a bit of a legend in the Jira world. I remember reading Practical Jira Administration. Was it 9 years ago? I can't remember how
At
long you've
least,
had that.
yeah.
Yeah. So no, really excited to have you on today. And then last but not least, we've got Josh.
Josh here from Grid.io. I'm the founder of Grid.io and been in the Atlassian space for maybe 4 to 5 years now officially. So probably a little more fresh than the rest of the panelists. Maybe I'll have some more spicy takes, as Amaresh said. So careful what you wish for. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, Rodney, let's kick things off with you. So, as someone who's sort of like I guess dealt with like a huge number of migrations over the years, what do you see as like some of the most obvious and common security pitfalls that Jira admins face when they're making that transition from data center to cloud? We all know that that's sort of like the hot topic today. So I guess I'll hand the mic over to you and get your thoughts on that.
Well, the big thing about data center, and this isn't the case for every data center instance, just like it wasn't the case for every server instance, but the vast majority of them are used to hiding behind their company firewall. Well, now you're on the cloud. You don't have that luxury. Your instance, and therefore the access to your instance is going to be on the public internet, which means you definitely need to have your identity game on point. You've got to be able to know, okay, who's allowed to log in, who isn't, when are they actually logging in? Are they logging in where you're expecting them to? If Rodney's based out of Atlanta and he's logging in from, say, Russia, might be a red flag to keep track of. You got to be sure you have your password policy in place, your two-factor authentication, all the basic good hygiene for security that you would expect from users. You got to really be on top of, because all it takes is one user with reused credentials and sloppy practices, and that's your entire instance compromised.
Yeah, I would echo that. And the fact that with the growth of popularity of the Atlassian tool set, all our instances are that much more of a target. So we see many more attempts at all of the Atlassian Cloud instances.
How do you think companies should sort of think about integrating sort of security planning if they are sort of planning a migration? Is that something like a day zero conversation that sort of shapes sort of the entire project, or is that something that companies typically layer in later?
Who wants to give their opinion? Is it good to do it later on, bolt on the security after the migration? I don't think so. No.
I mean, we all know the correct answer here is you should be having this conversation from day one. We all know the real answer is this often is the afterthought. And occasionally it is the afterthought after something's already happened. So that's definitely something we need to keep in mind here. Should you be having these conversations early and often? Yes. Does it always happen? No. So then it becomes, okay, how do we get to where we want to be, considering we're already behind the game?
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the companies I work with, that is always something that they bring up. If there's a migration, they'll talk about security. But then when it comes to the actual migration, they might not do anything regards to security until way after. Even though it is like something they think about initially, it's not something they always follow through with upfront.
Right. I like to draw an analogy with backups too. They think that, well, customers often seem to just assume that the backups happen magically in the cloud and Atlassian will handle it all for you. Same thing with security. I mean, yes, you might get away with it for a long while if you haven't set it up properly, but eventually this is going to bite you.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting point, and I wonder where there's that the notion of the shared responsibility model in the cloud, and do you think that catches folks sort of off guard? Like, do you think they understand what that means, and like where the biggest gaps are in that sort of distinction? I see Rodney and Matt, you were both vigorously.
We're both shaking our heads, but Rodney shook his head more. So why didn't you answer, Rodney?
I mean, I hear this time and again. As the consultant, I'm usually the one to bring up, hey, you guys should be thinking about backups here. And the answer is invariably, I mean, it's always the same. Well, it's on cloud. Isn't Atlassian doing that? And yes, Atlassian, to be clear, Atlassian does do a certain amount of backups on their own. But as I like to say, that is Atlassian covering themselves. If an Atlassian does something, or the instance messed up, or something they do impacts your instance, that's what their backups are for. If you do something, you might get lucky and get some help from Atlassian, but I would not count on it. You need to have your own disaster recovery plan for if you do something, or something's done through stolen credentials, or something maybe not you intended, but something still happened because of something, quote unquote, you need to have your own disaster recovery plan independent from Atlassian.
Yeah, and the same thing with security. People say, oh, Atlassian will take care of all the security, but there's a reason we're having this conversation now, because we want people to know that's not, well, you need to know about it. You need to take responsibility in the shared responsibility.
I have yet to hear the words shared responsibility from a client that I've worked with. I've never come across someone who's like, oh, we need backups. It's always something that's suggested to them, and usually there's some pushback on that.
Yeah. Well, keep hoping. You may you may have a
Fingers
surprise
crossed.
this year sometime. Suddenly they'll say it, and you'll be like, "Oh, do you read the documentation? Oh my goodness!"
Josh, what makes people push back on that? Like, where do you think, where is that coming from?
I think it's a twofold. It's like, what are the chances of that happening? And number two is like, oh, it's more work and more money, because there's no free solution in a way. Like, there are cheaper alternatives, or like you can do it on your own. Usually it's going to be a plugin most of the time, unless you're manually exporting the data, which is still a good option, and you can do that, but it's a lot more time consuming. So I think most companies are just like, yeah, it's probably not going to happen. If it does, like, we don't want to spend the time worrying about it.
I think there's mental model as well. People are still they know that the cloud is not the same as on-prem, but in their head they're like, oh, I didn't have to worry about that problem when I was on-prem, so maybe I don't have to worry about it on cloud. But they're wrong. They are mistaken.
So it sounds like
I,
I was gonna say it sounds like there's almost an education, like an awareness,
Yeah.
like piece to it.
I think some of it goes back to marketing, not specifically Atlassian's marketing, but just the general industry marketing of the cloud, where, oh, you don't need a sysadmin anymore. You don't need these classically trained people who worked on your on-premise instance. And these were the people who were often concerned with, we need to think about security, we need to think about backups, we need to think about disaster recovery. So with them kind of marketing behind that, you don't need these people anymore. Well, if you don't need the people that are thinking about this, it kind of becomes out of sight, out of mind.
I think adding on to that, I know you both have like been in this a lot longer than I have. Probably like 70% of the companies I work with have never been on-prem. So that's not even something that's like on their mind at all. So they don't even think that's its a possibility, especially when like you use the Office suite, the Google suite, whatever else. You don't really think about backups, and you just adopt Jira, and it doesn't really cross your mind.
That's a good point. Yeah, Google does it all for you with the G Suite. So why doesn't Atlassian do all of it for us? Why do we have to think about this?
Yeah, I mean, so maybe there is a bigger like piece around out of sight, out of mind, as you said, and I wonder, like, is another topic to talk about here is, I guess with the cloud, you have this whole new notion of like access control, and obviously with cloud, you have all these new permission models. Um, is there like do people like understand that I guess that there is a need for a standardized like least privilege model that is very different to how they've sort of dealt with permissions on premise, especially in terms of giving out access to like contractors and external users. How do you see that being different on cloud?
I think companies are more worried about licensing costs than access issues. Usually when the conversation comes to like someone having access to Jira, it's, are we paying for that license? Not, is that person going to access certain information that they don't need access to? That's the more common conversation I hear. And I think a lot of companies they still do mention like, oh, we know we need better permissions. We know we need better, project related organizational level permissions. It is sort of, again, an afterthought for most companies because they're more worried about how their work gets done, how their projects are run, less about who has access to what. But I do actually hear it quite often. It's just not top priority for most.
Yeah, to kind of build on what Josh said, when you talk to them one-on-one, they're often saying, yeah, we need to lease value permission. But when you're actually in the trenches working with these companies, the question is not, do these people have too much permissions? It's, do these people not have enough? They are often terrified that someone is not going to be able to access something they need at the time of the need, and it's going to delay some project or cause some issue. So that many times when they're actually in the process of working, they'd rather give too many than risk people going without. And that's the exact opposite mindset then maybe we should be teaching them.
Yeah,
And
it's also interesting that Atlassian doesn't have the same model of Microsoft where you can say, this is a template user, duplicate their permissions for this kind of role. Because I would always get a lot of requests about, oh, just give me the same positions as my friend over here. But that's not how Atlassian works by default.
yeah, interesting. Rodney, I want to come back to what you were saying about people generally wanting to err on the side of over provisioning permissions because they're worried about sort of like that adding friction to the work, like getting done if the right people, like if the people can't get access to the things they need. Is that because fundamentally, there is some sort of a bottleneck or like a person that has to sort of go in and figure out, like, do you think Atlassian should be doing something to make that more streamlined, to sort of make it easy for people to get access like just in time?
I mean, the short answer is absolutely. Long answer is a little more nuanced. Find most of these companies, it's not even the fact that they currently have a bottleneck, it's that they did at one point in the past, and they're still operating off that mental model. Whether that is still true or not is an open question. And oftentimes with cloud, it's often not true, because one thing I always say is when you're going to cloud, you definitely need to think about guard early, and that usually handles a lot of the provisioning for you, so you don't have these issues even when you're doing things properly. But they're so used to that mental model where, oh, I have to wait for a Jira admin to go in and set the permissions, and then go into the project, set permissions, and then they might not have access to the right project right away, and the project admin of that project can never be bothered, and so it'll be 2 weeks before they can even get started. That's usually not the case anymore, but people are so used to it that this just their assumption.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's more difficult to set up a good Jira permissions environment. You really have to rely a lot on groups, maybe like tie in from your Microsoft Google Suite. But once that is there, I think it makes it a lot easier to, kind of like Matt said, there's no way to copy permissions over, but you can add someone to the same group. And if that initially is set up correctly, it sort of is feasible. It just takes more work up front.
Yeah, I mean, it also takes some solid documentation for the people doing the provisioning, and that they should stick to it, and that they've been trained to stick to that process. It's very easy to have it set up in a half decent way and then just watch it all decay over time as people get randomly added to different groups and no one knows why. We've all seen that.
It's true.
I'm glad that you guys did like touch it. Yeah, like Rodney, you mentioned guard. So I'm curious. Beyond just enabling, like SSO and skin provisioning, what do you think is the most powerful or underutilized feature that you wish more admins knew about?
I'm going to
And
need
I
to
can,
think on this for a second, so
I,
I'm going to pass this over to Matt real quick while I gather my
How,
thoughts.
how did I know? I'm going to give you a snap judgment. I'm just going to say auditing. Always more auditing, and more metrics and more alerting, because it's very hard to detect when you've had some misconfiguration, misprovisioning of somebody. It seemed to work for a while and then it all went wrong. And how did you know that? So there's my snap answer. Josh, what would you say?
I'm going to go with something super basic that most don't know about, which is just exporting your users and looking at the last access time. That is like so overlooked, but can really help because you assign these licenses, people need something, and you could audit that and see someone has an access confluence for 2 years, and what's the point of giving them that license? So that's a common one I see that a lot of teams just overlook and don't even know is possible.
Well, that's a very good point. Yeah, I think it's an interesting question always. What level do you set that? Is it like 2 years? Is that enough time, or is it two
I
weeks,
go
or
like I
somewhere
go
in
6
between?
months,
6 months
like pretty
is
sure.
usually
Yeah.
6 months usually my go-to, but I've seen people get aggressive, like 1 month and you're out. Um,
Yeah, depends on the pressure on the licenses, right?
Yeah.
yep,
You don't lose anything. Like you could always add the license back, right?
yeah.
There are problems at mentioning users who've been removed, I think, but yeah. Apart from that,
I mean, that's usually an indication, hey, this person if I'm trying to mention them, they can't see it. Again, if they haven't been used it in 2 years, why are you trying to mention them? Maybe there's something else to be said there. But going back to Matt's point, I think alerting is a big deal because we live in an environment where it's just assumed at least some percentage of your passwords are out on the dark web, which means you have to assume for just about any username, any email, any service you have, someone's going to attempt to reuse it. And if you're not using this proper password hygiene, if you're using the same password you've used for the past 12 years on everything, people are going to try and use that on your Atlassian instance as well. And you need some way to recognize when things are not as they should be.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm just sitting here checking in my head that I haven't done that recently. Reused a password.
I'm totally guilty of that.
Password managers changed how I deal with them altogether. I'd highly recommend you get so everyone should use a password manager service of some sort.
Those just get a little bit annoying because you have like multiple devices and then you use multiple browsers. You got to make sure the extensions are installed. I get why people like shy away from them, but yeah, very useful.
I've had, again, not to endorse any particular company, but I've had huge success with Proton Pass from the same people that do Proton Mail.
Oh, that's a good tip. Thank you. I
Look
must
at
say,
that.
some of our household passwords, the security is that we put them on the sticky note, and then we stick them under each other's laptop, so it's not on the right laptop. But that's embarrassing, isn't it?
We've all been there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna segue us into another can of worms, if I can call it that, which are marketplace apps on cloud. Obviously, very different environment from on-prem, where no data sort of leaves your servers. So I guess, yeah, like I'll go to Josh with this one. What's criteria should people be looking at when they're evaluating marketplace apps on the cloud, especially around security risks?
I think really the only criteria that makes the biggest impact is like, is it run on Atlassian? Is it hosted on Atlassian? I think a lot of this is like mostly going away because Atlassian's pushing heavily for Forge, and that's a requirement very soon. There's still a lot of apps that don't run on Atlassian, aren't hosted on Forge, but probably within the next couple of years, like majority of those apps will be. And most of the apps that I tend to use personally are run on Forge, and there's a lot less security concerns there. There are still some, but at least you know your data is hosted with Atlassian. Everything runs on Forge, on Atlassian servers. You're not too worried about that data going somewhere else entirely. So that's probably the biggest thing that comes to mind.
Josh stole my answer.
He did. What he said was absolutely the key point there. But I think there's a lot more on choosing an app from the marketplace than just solely the data. There's the reputation of the vendor. There's your opinion of the documentation. What kind of support are you going to get from them, especially around security concerns? Have they prepared documentation that you can take to your security team as an Atlassian admin and say, look, this is why I believe that we should trust these people. So there's the core, where is my data, and is it safe, and is it in the right country and server? But then there's also all the other human parts that go around it.
And just to touch on that, I just kind of connect the 2 points from Josh and Matt. The old way of doing these apps, which was Connect API, is going to go away at some point. Atlassian has already told the marketplace partners, this is not sticking around. If you're not moving to Forge, you're going to be left behind. It wasn't we may do this or we're thinking about doing this. We are going to do this. We just don't have a time frame yet. So if you are using an app that does not say runs on Atlassian, that you do not know for a fact is built with Forge, it's going to go away sooner than later. So you've got a whole workflow problem where you've built a workflow around this app and it's not available anymore. What are you going to do? So it's a security concern, but it's also a viability concern long term that you definitely need to consider.
Do you think that's going to be common? Is there are going to be a lot of apps that just don't run on Forge?
I ran across one earlier this week that I could not confirm runs on Forge. In fact, I do not think runs on Forge and is unsupported, which means it is not getting updated. And this is something that the client would have considered a critical use case that I'm like, I can't recommend this.
Yeah.
Is it a more niche app, or is it like a fairly popular
It is very niche. It is for specific integration, but I'm looking at this going, I know this is what you guys need for your integration, but I cannot recommend this long term, because if you build a workflow on this, it is going to disappear. It's not may, it will disappear.
But they do have their opportunity there to build their own app or work with the original vendor and have them build or extend the app on. There's all sorts of ways.
In my report, that's actually the recommendation is via Forge, you could build your own integration here. That way, it's maintained and built properly.
Right. Well, and then take on the maintenance load, which is not insignificant, but yeah. So there are. It's not like customers are only locked into marketplace apps.
Correct.
Yeah, there's an interesting question from Will about badges from Atlassian. I know Cloud Fortified is one that a lot of apps offer. Is that something? Is that a consideration at all when looking at apps?
So it's nice to see it there. It's better than it not being there, but it doesn't guarantee that I'm not going to do all the other due diligence.
I mean, I'm still going to be looking at the reviews. I'm going to still look at the install base, because Atlassian will tell you how many people are using this app, and if it's a low number, you need to start asking some questions. Is this a niche use case, or is this something with the app itself that maybe there's a better option out there? It's definitely a consideration. It is not a deal breaker per se, but it definitely gives me peace of mind when the auditors come around that, this app is doing their due diligence. They are doing the good maintenance things like bug bounties and such that allow me to rest a little easier when I'm talking to the auditors.
Right. And especially, I think, in the community, if you ask questions about a particular app, say, hey, I'm thinking of this. If you get a response back from the app developers, that's a great plus. It's a great, look, they monitor the community. They're responsive. They seem to be helpful here.
I don't get to use that as a metric anymore.
Why?
Because I'm the Jira guy.
You can post. You should have a shadow account. Shadow, not the Jira guy. You could ask the questions there.
Just use a pseudonym.
The Confluence.
I should.
You should use Matt Doar. You should use my name and see what happens. Or Josh. We'll all become Josh for a day.
So it sounds like there is a set of considerations when you're looking at a new app. Are there any? Is there an ongoing sort of due diligence or review that you would sort of go back and, let's say, annually sort of perform when you're looking at what's in your environment?
I mean, I'd be interested to see in plugin usage. I do wish we had. I know we have a certain amount of information about how much an app is used. I'd like to see more. Some more fine grain info would be great, because every year you've got to justify it to some procurement team as an administrator. So any data that helps with that would be useful. Would be great.
And
I think.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say it matters a lot to do your due diligence yearly. I think not because you may not be using the app, but more because Atlassian might have dropped something that replaces the functionality that you used from that app before. And that, I see so many companies get an app and use 10% of the functionality because that's what they need from it. And it's worth it for them because they need that. But then Atlassian might come around and say, hey, here's this really surface level feature that this app does. And maybe it's not super in depth, but it's enough to get them to not need the app anymore.
But then you've got all the huge difficulties of that they only use 10%, but that they used it on 40% of their Confluence pages, and now you want to use the native functionality, but you got to go through the migration exercise for all these pages. So
one that comes to mind was checklists, and then there was action items now in Jira, which they're not a direct replacement, but if your checklist usage was super lightweight, It's a good alternative, and I've seen a few
Yeah.
companies just kind of ditch checklists altogether.
Yeah, I saw there's an update about the scripted fields request. So
Mm.
we may be getting more scripted field support from Atlassian in Jira.
I mean, I'm thinking back to ancient examples as well. Single sign-on. It used to be exclusively an app back in the server and data center days, and then it became native functionality in data center. Server, you still had to use the app, but for a lot of use cases, the built-in functionality was sufficient. There were always the edge cases where no, you have to use the app for X, Y, and Z reason, but these are always the things you need to think about come renewal time because, as Matt said, you're always going to have to go up to your finance person and go, here's why we need these apps. And most of these apps on a household scale are not cheap. When you start multiplying across your entire user base, we're talking about thousands, if not more, per year. So definitely something you need to take a look at. Annual feels a good thing just because you know you're going to have that renewal coming up. Just, am I actually using this? What part am I using this? How critical is that use case for my workflow? And where you're at it, just go back, have the reviews change, has functionality changed, has the built-in features changed. What's new here that maybe we aren't using that maybe we should be using as well?
Yeah, and as a customer, I would always say people are going to prefer buying something from the original application vendor from Atlassian, than over dealing with another company, a marketplace app vendor, because it's one less thing. You've already had your security team look at Atlassian. Makes it easier.
On the topic of, I guess, the apps and I guess integrations, the other interesting, I guess, consideration on cloud is obviously OAuth, like OAuth and API tokens. So, are there any sort of best practices uh, people should be thinking about when it comes to how they should, yeah, secure like tokens and API integrations that they might have built in house?
Two things come to mind. First, I cannot count how many times I've been talking to someone at the start of their migration journey and went, okay, who's using the API? And I just get blank looks because no one bothered to catalog it.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to catalog, but it's even more difficult to look at afterwards and go, okay, let me try and figure out an audit who's using it. Because especially for the on-premise apps, Jira itself is using Jira's own API a lot of the time. So now you got to separate its traffic out from the actual API usage. But the second consideration there is the number one way I've always seen API keys get compromised is someone is not thinking and puts them into the repository.
Yep. Every time.
Every time. If I'm resetting a key, it's because GitHub again. Yeah.
There's two things that come to my mind when it comes to like OAuth and API access, both of which Atlassian actually fixed recently, very, very recently. The first one is service accounts, which are phenomenal. I know not everybody has them, but they're rolling out. Way better than using a user account and should have been done a long time ago. I think it's huge. And then with the API connections that you actually build, the scopes that they've added and the expiration. Before you have an API key, you have access to everything. If you're an org admin, you pretty much have control of everything. And you have zero scopes, zero expiration. If you lose that key, and you don't delete it, bad things can happen. So I think having those default scopes up, and then you can't have an API key longer than 1 year anymore. Those two things have been pretty major.
It's true, but I'm going to just note that there are 326 scopes because I went in and checked.
Too many.
So that's a little overwhelming. I mean, I'd like to be able to group them into sets and just say, okay, apply by group. And then also I agree about the service accounts, but it is a change to the REST URL. You have to use the
Mm.
API, Atlassian.com. So it's
Yeah.
non-trivial to move, but not impossible. But you're right; they should have been done years ago. Having random users accessing any REST API they like was always a bit hairy for me on DC.
The worst part was you have those user accounts, and then those integrations are built. The person leaves the company, and then everything breaks, and that is a pain to deal with.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's
Actually,
always something critical. Always something critical.
the one that got me was you give. I would give out. We had like 300 or 400 at a large company I worked at before, different user accounts that we gave names that made it clear they were service accounts. And you'd create one for a specific use case with one group, and then magically it would pop up used by a different group because the person had moved from one group to another, and you're like, oh, that was interesting. You didn't think to come back and get another account with us?
And they're free. They don't cost a license, which is another win.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I sometimes I have fantasies about, can we have, turn off the APIs week where we just selectively disable certain APIs and see who screams. And if it doesn't scream, then that didn't need to be on in the first place. Same thing with service accounts, but maybe not.
I've done that with apps before, where I've just disabled an app for a week to see if anyone's using it.
Oh, really? You're braver than I am, Rodney. And were they? Did they scream?
Actually, the app I knew was in low usage already, so it wasn't as brave as necessarily it would appear on the front. And it proved that no one, in fact, was using it. So I was able to save that on our next renewal.
Win-win.
Hmm.
Josh, are service accounts, is that in EAP or have they been rolled out to customers? What's the latest with that?
I think they're like partially rolled out, kind of like Rovo right now. I still don't have Rovo, but I have service accounts. So I'm not sure where they're at with that, but I'm guessing within the next few months, everyone will have access.
Yeah.
Yeah, when talking about Rovo, I mean, yeah, it's a perfect to segue into another interesting, I guess, hot topic for that's been on everyone's minds. I guess, I mean, where do we even start to unpack the security considerations with Rovo and cloud? Obviously, Rovo is promising me the moon and telling me that it can find and synthesize information from all of my Jira and Confluence, and it has, like, if I have years of messy, inconsistent like data with overly permissive like access to it, how do I like think about like the implications of unleashing a tool like Rovo on top of that?
Mm.
I'm hesitant with Rovo. I hate to say it. I love the capabilities they're in, but I know and Atlassian is always first thing they tell me is Rovo respects your users' permissions. They're not just going to tell you something you shouldn't see, but we've seen so many cases where these LLMs will leak data unintentionally just because someone put in just the right prompt in. And so I understand what license tell me. I understand they're trying to build this from the ground up to respect permissions, but I just have a hard time believing it in my heart of hearts.
Yeah, if you're a regulated industry, just don't go there. Not yet. If you're more comfortable with your own data being, or shards of it being sprayed over the cloud, then sure, it can help you.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a strong opinion on this. My general kind of thought process around AI and security is, at least for non-regulated industries, non-government industries, is that like they probably, if someone wants their data, they'll probably get it anyway. So you're probably not risking that much more by using AI most of the time. Same thing with like my personal data. If someone wants it, I don't really care too much to give it to them. If it makes my life easier, why not? But I know I'm a little bit unique in that sense.
Maybe it's a generational thing. I'm not going to say names and boxes, but yeah, I don't know.
Are are there any, like, I guess what I was trying to get at earlier is, are there any sets of best practices or steps that a Jira admin should be thinking about if, let's say, they want to, like get ready to turn on Rovo in the next sort of 6 to 12 months? Are there things that are low hanging fruit that they should be thinking about?
Or talk to legal.
Absolutely, that should be your first stop with something like this.
Right.
I think just again per Atlassian, which I have nothing better to go than to go with them on this, because again, my first instinct is no, but I'm going to trust Atlassian here. They say it respects your permissions. You need to be sure you have your permissions set up properly, down to the project and/or space level. Make sure people don't have access spaces they shouldn't, because if they have it, Rovo's then going to help them find the information on this space they shouldn't have had access to begin with. And there goes your secret project that you didn't want everyone to know about just yet. Make sure that people who have access have it, people who don't have access don't, and just kind of keep an eye on that, because that's really going to steer how Rovo should react to a situation.
I'd add a quirky little one, which is just like you do with people, where you don't really give out delete permission in much of Atlassian if you're sensible, because it's hard to undo.
Mm-hmm.
I'd still make sure that whatever accounts are using Rovo to access it, just stop the deletion in case things go haywire.
Yeah, I think Rovo's tricky because it gets context to everything. There's no limitation to that.
Mm-hmm.
So other than like permission cleanup, if you can use it, you can use it. If legal doesn't let you, you can't. There's kind of not much else you could do, unless they did like say, hey, only this space, only this Confluence project, whatever. But that's just not an option right now.
No, I think it would
I'm
be a
not
good
even sure
option
how
to
that would
take.
work.
Yeah, but that probably can't work. I'm assuming.
Matt, I want to come back to something you mentioned earlier about logging and I guess like how like are there any particular things your like admins should be looking for when they're monitoring sort of their logs? Are there particular like events or things that should like have alarm bells ringing? Like how would you recommend people like use those logs and what are
Yeah.
like what are
I mean, so Atlassian has two things. It has guardrails and limits, and the guardrails are the recommended use of the product, but aren't actually constrained. And then it has limits, which will chop you off, like too many users or too many projects or anything like that. I think that those sorts of problems, or not problems, those sort of constraints, I'll say, are more and more important as you become more comfortable with the tools, that you should have some sort of metrics and alerts around them, because otherwise you won't know until you just run into a brick wall one day and suddenly you get all these user reports that they can't do something. So those sorts of things, when people say logging and security to me, I'm always thinking, oh, what's in the log? But I think more usefully, it's about what was in the log that told me that I was approaching a problem point in the way I've configured this whole system.
I still think of logging in the old server and data center sense. And again, I came at this as a sysadmin. So I'd be the type of person I could look at the service logs of the service running Jira on the server and kind of just feel something's right or something's not right here, just on how the logs are scrolling by. So that's what I think of when people say logs, is that, not the audit logs, which people should definitely be checking on a regular basis. We don't get access to that kind of information, so kind of have to intuit with just how Jira is performing, whether there's issues or not. I mean, look at the audit log, see who's creating, deleting, all these kind of things. But Atlassian recently announced, and I don't have it right up with me. Here it is. February next year, they're going to be putting some hard limits on projects. And it's like 700 fields per project, 150 work types per project.
Yeah,
And
they are.
yeah, these are limits. And I'm still going, I would have at least half each of those at minimum, if not been more aggressive than that. Just because I don't get how you have a usable project when you have 700 fields in a single project.
Is there a performance hit on that? Has anybody noticed that?
Probably not at those numbers, I would guess. I mean, I used to run into problems where there's another limit is what the 5,000 comments on an issue on a work item.
Yeah, 5,000.
And I've certainly had to deal with issues in DC that had 100,000 plus comments on them, and it's all from the automation. Something just keeps adding comments about it, and completely useless. No humans are going to take any action, but that does slow things down. Surprise.
I have seen, again, not on a cloud instance yet, knock on wood, but I have seen fields slow down a Jira instance substantially just because there were so many of them.
Oh, it defined on a screen, you mean? Like hundreds on a screen?
No, there was so much in the index, it slowed down the entire instance. But we were talking on the order of thousands of custom fields in the instance.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm curious if Cloud would have that same problem. I did a test not too long ago where I installed 100 plugins on a cloud environment. My assumption was that we'll see some slowdown, some problems, whatever. It did absolutely nothing. Like, it was within the margin of error of having no impact, which is like super interesting because I'm sure on Data Center would have had an impact, but on cloud, it's just the UI that is so overwhelming and overbearing, but the actual performance of the environment was totally the same, which was pretty surprising.
Yeah, I saw that. That was a very interesting post, actually.
Yeah, on cloud, I've tested releases, versions, whatever you want to call them, for projects. How many you can load up in a single project before you run into issues. And I think I came up to, I was only starting to see performance impacts when I hit like 15,000 releases in a single project. And obviously there was bots and APIs involved in generating that much because I'm not creating that much on my own. But I was surprised how robust that particular part of the code base was, considering.
The case I ran into with people with even more versions, releases, milestones, whatever we call them, was because somebody wanted, it was like a multi-select field. They used it as a multi-select field that project admins could modify the values of the options. And boy, yeah, it does slow down. It will actually stop an issue loading in the end, I think, but it's got better.
Cool.
Thinking of which, with names and things, can we do a diversion onto names? Can we pick a name? Version, release, milestone. Pick one. Don't care. Or even something else. Just
make up your mind.
Can we talk about apps?
No, we can't talk about apps, Rodney.
That is an overloaded term. I mean, are we talking about a system app? Are we talking about a marketplace app? Are we talking about Atlassian app?
Yeah. Oh well.
We're gonna call them plugins again and add-ons again at some point in the future. Is my prediction.
Wow. All right.
Cool. I'm gonna try to bring this home. So I guess I have a few more questions, and then we can see if we can take some questions from the audience. But I guess one question I had was where do you see the role of I guess employee training and awareness fit in terms of securing your Atlassian cloud environment?
Rodney, I know you're dying to take that one. I can just tell.
Yeah. I've asked several people about this, and everybody has a different opinion. I've seen some people swear up and down they've seen the research says user education has minimal impact on security. They are talking particularly in regards to stuff like malware attacks and phishing. I've seen people swear the other way around that the only way you're going to get ahead of these security vulnerabilities is to teach the users what the right way is, and otherwise, what are you even doing? I myself, I'd rather have the users know the right way, and this is completely facetious reason. That way, when they do it the wrong way, they can't claim they didn't know better.
Yeah,
But I
it's
guess
good.
the question is, if you train them, does that mean they understand? Or like if you have a training, does that mean they do it thoroughly? I think that's like the real question of whether it works or not.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
And
that brings us a whole question of, does the online training work for all of these required trainings we all do each year?
I'm a big fan of simulations. I think those like give a very clear indication because not only do the users actually learn and see what happens when you click on the wrong thing, but you also get reports and then you're like, you could grill those people a little more and be like, what's going on here? Why are you clicking on every link? But yeah, it gives you like real reports and real use case for those people to see what they're doing wrong potentially.
and to be clear here, I'm no model citizen. On some of those simulations I've had, it's the end of the day. I'm not really paying attention, and I've done it. Not every time. I usually pretty good about catching it, but I don't have a 100% track record, so I'm not going to
Mhm.
get too upset with someone on a simulation where maybe they did. But said 90% is still better than 75 is still better than 50% failure rate on these. So absolutely, I love doing those. I love seeing the results of those, but that's with full understanding. Nobody here is perfect.
Right, but I think internally at Adaptivist we do a lot of, you show the train wreck happening in security. So here's an example of the message that someone got, and here's what they did. And as you're watching along, you're like, oh no, don't click on the link, don't click on that link, and then they click on the link, and then you're like, oh man, look what happened. And that's quite effective. Certainly, it's more interesting than listening to a series of different slides with bullets on them, bullet points. But
Maybe we need reverse psychology and tell people to click the link.
no, don't think so.
I mean, another
It,
security concern when I was a younger employee was leaving your computer unlocked.
Yeah,
And one of our coworkers used to be bad about it. In the area, the U.S. I live in, college football is a huge part of the culture. So the last time he left his computer unlocked, we actually changed his desktop to his rival schools winning the championship. Just picture that on his desktop. And that was the last time he
oh
left
yeah,
his computer unlocked. So I do seeing the train wreck and being a part of the train wreck, I definitely see some value in.
yeah. We traditionally would send out a message from their Slack saying, "Lunch is on me. I'm buying today," and stuff like that.
We
But
did that to him. That didn't work. This was the only thing. This was the last thing that worked. Said it's the last place you always find something the last place you look because you're not looking after that.
yeah,
The last time he did this was that, so it's the one that worked.
but yet I go into the office today and look around, and sure enough, there are a few people who still got their laptops wide open and walked away. And I'm like, gosh, you're trusting.
yeah, I think it's an interesting dynamic because you have like obviously the cybersecurity threats and then the remediation of it, and then it's like you kind of one up each other and it just keeps going.
Mhm.
And I think the training piece is important because I recently saw something that just completely blew my mind. And I'm really good at looking email domains and looking at that. If it seems sketchy, slightly off, I will catch it every single time. I saw this thing on LinkedIn a couple days ago where these malicious actors are buying domains with a different A character. So like there's the round A, and then there's like the more cursive style A. And they buy a domain with a different character, and they use that to send an email. And I was like, that is insane. Like I would never catch that. But now that I know, I would probably like double check and take a second look. So I don't know what the studies say about the training, but at least for myself, just having some context or knowledge does make me a little bit more aware at all times.
Yeah, it's interesting how these phishing email they're always a step ahead, and there's always something new, like having domains with Unicode characters, and it's just having to stay up to date with yeah, all the latest things that they're doing. All right, I'm mindful of time, so I guess I'll pose one sort of final question to the panel here, and so yeah, I guess anyone's free to take it, but the question is, if Atlassian were to announce one new security feature tomorrow, what would you want that to be? What's on people's wish list that they'd really want Atlassian to deliver?
Hmm.
So many choices.
I feel like have I stumped the panel here, or is
Maybe.
it too hard? Or is it too hard?
No, let's turn it
Analysis
round.
paralysis.
Turn it round. Amaresh, what feature would you choose if you had your magic wand?
If I had my magic wand, I think getting permissions aligned across Jira and Confluence, that for me has always been such a weird thing. But permission schemes are completely different. I know Confluence did something recently where they made some changes to the permission schemes, and they aligned a lot of those to be simpler. I see Martin talking about automation audit on the issue level. That's an interesting one. But for me, I would try to like unify like permissions across, like they've now just the footprint of Atlassian is getting bigger and bigger. They've got Loom, they've got Trello. As someone who's sort of managing that whole estate, to me that seems like a minefield of having to figure out what permissions people should get across different apps. So yeah, like I'm curious if you guys have run into that at all.
I mean, related permission schemes in Confluence, the amount of times I had to go, okay, we need to remove this permission from all the Confluence spaces, and you're looking at like 200 spaces. That's always a nightmare. And I'm surprised it's 2025. We still don't have permission schemes the way we do in Jira in Confluence.
Yeah. Well, they were teams from different side of an office corridor, so they didn't talk to each other. So they each had their own unique ideas about security and authorization.
I know the history. I know how it came about. It's just still I'm like, okay, you've had a few years to fix this now.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's a big one.
I think I'd like to see templated models so that you could just say, here's a set of permissions and authorizations, and this person can just, all these people fit into here, and then maybe some better automated documentation about the difference between the different permissions, the different permission schemes, things like that. Like, why do what are the difference in all my Jira schemes and all my sets of configurations of Confluence? Why do they exist?
Going back to your original question, I would have two, one of which is solved now, which is the service accounts. The second one will never happen. That's my theory, which is automatic license removal. I know some apps do this, but natively, I looked into this and actually ran the numbers on like what it would potentially cost Atlassian to implement something like this. Don't remember exactly what it was, but it was to the tune of like between like $10 and $100 million per day that Atlassian would lose on licensing if they implemented it. And like when you talk about numbers like that, I just have a very hard time believing that it's in their best interest to do it.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, we just ended up building. We're testing that with some of our customers now, and so it'll be interesting to see how, yeah, like whether Atlassian, when this is on Atlassian's radar, how what the response is. So yeah, I guess stay tuned for that. But yeah, you're right. I think historically changing anything around like how users are sort of like licensed, and even when it comes to apps, I think that's always going to be a bit of a thorny issue because there's just so much money on the table that they're probably not going to want to leave. So yeah, it's an interesting topic. But well, we are out of time. So I really do want to thank everybody. Thank you so much for coming along. Thank you for the viewers for watching and yeah, for engaging with us. We're gonna send over a recording shortly. So yeah, stay tuned for that, and yeah, we'll pop over those details to you. And yeah, if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to any of us. We'd be happy to chat to you. But thanks again, guys. Really appreciate your time today.
Bye all. Good to chat.
Bye.
Yeah.